Good Wednesday afternoon, everybody. It's Jim, it's Matt, and we are here. And we're going to be joined by somebody who's been a friend of mine for a while now. He's an incredibly talented writer. He's great. Uh, got his own show here on YouTube. He's Jason Watkins, and he is Hall of Fame college sports. Jason, welcome.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me, Jim. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again, my friend. Now, you
Matthew.
have been covered a number of different things over the years. You've covered golf, you've covered college football, and now you're
Yeah.
covering Oklahoma and
The
the
SEC.
SEC. And Matthew is right there on the not too far from the campus of the University of Georgia. So you got some the SEC is well represented here today.
Yeah.
Good deal.
So let's open it up, guys. Good news if you're an Ole Miss fan, they didn't get dinged last night for Kiffin leaving, and I think that was actually a pretty good situation.
I would say it was the correct decision. You know,
Mhm.
you can't really punish those kids for what they can't control.
Right.
Same team, different coach. Charlie Weiss Jr. is coming back to be their offensive coordinator throughout the run.
Mhm.
So you would expect schematically their offense isn't going to change that much. Obviously, you won't have the input of Lane Kiffin when it comes into your week in, week out game planning.
Mhm.
But overall, I think that's the correct move by the committee. I was a little bit surprised to see how far Texas A&M fell.
Mhm. How about you, Jason?
Yeah, I think it's probably the right move. I think that Ole Miss is definitely those players going out there and being able to kind of put aside it's definitely been a distraction that
Yeah.
of all the stuff with Lane and LSU. But I think them being able to put that aside and win that Egg Bowl matchup against a team that offensively they're gotten a lot better over the latter half of the year and everything like that. But and in a rivalry game, you never know. It's easy to go and fall victim in a game like that. So to me, I didn't think that you would probably see them fall too much. Maybe I figured they might fall one spot maybe, but they ended up gaining a spot. So it didn't really hurt them at all. As far as Texas A&M is concerned, I don't know. I think that when you start looking back at their schedule, aside from Notre Dame, they've gotten kind of a cherry pick schedule for the SEC. When you look at it, their next biggest game was, of course, Texas on the road. Their biggest win aside from Notre Dame. I mean, I challenge people to which one is it? Is it Missouri? Who is it? So to me, I think it was probably the best one that they had, the best game they had aside from Notre Dame in this, not having to play Alabama, not having to play Georgia, not having to play even Oklahoma or any of these other, Ole Miss even. So, not having played any of the top schools that are also going to be into the college football playoff, I think that you can see why they probably dropped there. But that being said, I think they're secure right in there in the college football playoffs. So I don't think it really hurts them that much. If you're in the top 8, you're secure, I think.
Okay, cool. Let me ask you guys. We got got a quick question here. No, actually, we don't. It looked like a question, and then it basically
It's just a bunch
went
of
gibberish on us.
hashtags.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get back. Now, you were at Oklahoma. You followed Oklahoma this year. Tell us about Oklahoma. Tell us about what you've seen in the SEC, and then we'll let Matthew, who also have seen. Matt, you've seen all but one Georgia game, right?
Oh, yeah, right around there.
Yeah. So we'll go with you, Jason, and talk about what you've seen this year as we get ready for the big weekend showdowns.
I think for me, Oklahoma it's really kind of, this team has come together and starting to look exactly, they say the best teams are kind of player led, and this team has definitely been that, but they are resembling their head coach in Brent Venables, fiery, a lot of passion out there defensively. They want to get out there and hit you. This is one of the best Oklahoma defenses I've probably seen. Honestly, I can't think of one that I think is better necessarily. Their championship year in 2000, I think that was right up there with this one. But depth-wise, especially along that front seven, is unbelievable. They get after the quarterback. They are able to – they get a lot of sacks. They lead the country in TFLs. This team has been led definitely by that defense. R. Mason Thomas goes down. Taylor Wine steps in and kind of becomes the same guy. Their linebackers are fantastic as well. They've got a lot of experience, and they've needed all of that because they've been struggling with offense a little bit for the second year in a row. You got a new offensive coordinator, new quarterback that has struggled since his injury. And I think, if not for this defense playing as well as it has, there's a couple of games you could have lost. But this team could have probably packed it in when they got beat by Ole Miss. After they lose the Red River Shootout game to Texas, which is always tough for Oklahoma, but then they go out and handily beat South Carolina on the road. Then they get a home game against Ole Miss, and they're not able to kind of hold on. They had taken the lead late, and they ended up having a bad turnover and losing that game in a close one. But since then, they've gone on the road, one at Tennessee, one at Alabama, breaking the nation's longest winning streak in the process there. A game that nobody really expected them to win. Then they come home and take down Missouri and LSU this past week, which, these are games, coming down the stretch. Everybody kind of came into this season saying, yeah, I like Oklahoma's team and everything, but this is the toughest schedule probably in the country, particularly down the final stretch of it. Nobody really expected them to be at this point. So although I'd like to see their offense be a little better heading into the playoff, their defense is second to none, in my opinion. And I think it's just I'm excited about what could possibly be if they do get just a little more efficient on the offensive side. I think the sky's the limit. But defensively, I haven't seen anything like this in a long time. They've taken on the moniker of hard to kill, and they've certainly been that.
One quick thing before Matt jumps in here. So you're telling me this defense is better than some of the ones that Bobby had when he was there?
Listen, it's right up there with the one he had in 2000, 2001, which were among the top. Absolutely. And, this is, you got to remember Brent Venables came in as a co-defensive coordinator under Bob Stoops from year one that he got there. So he's not he's known for this. He did the same thing at Clemson, built a championship level defense in short order once he got there as well, that was able to go in and win 2 championship games and shut down Alabama. So this isn't new for him, but Brent Venables took over play calling duties again this year. Being kind of on the hot seat coming into the season, he decided if he was going to go out, he was going to go out doing it his way. It's paid dividends, I believe. They've obviously recruited very well, and this team looks like an SEC team, particularly in the trenches and playing the way that they have been on the defensive side.
Matthew.
I was going to touch on Oklahoma. It's been, when you come to their defense, it really has been the size in the trenches, their ability to create havoc and reset the line of scrimmage, week in and week out. They say defense travels, and it has for Oklahoma all year. I won't lie. I thought they were done the second they lost that game to Ole Miss. I really thought that was going to be it for them. Just the way their offense had played, I didn't think. But there's a certain level of credit that has to be due to Brent Venables and that staff to be able to refocus themselves and bounce back after that, because it wasn't an easy slate that laid ahead. They could have lost any one of those games that they've played after that Ole Miss game, but they haven't. So that's really good. I am very curious. They've got a little bit of time now until that first round bye, and I would like to see some growth on that offense. It's been one that just has not found a rhythm after John Mateer got hurt with his hand injury. Now at this point, you have had the time to heal. I understand that you still get banged up throughout the season, that when you're playing, you come back from injury, but they need to find some continuity and some rhythm on that offense, because right now their
consistency is the key for him. He's got to get more consistent. I agree with you 100%. There was times in the LSU game that it very easily could have went the other way. If it not for that defense, literally they only gave up 2 third downs, and they were in the second half. Being a 3-3 game at the half with a turnover, I mean, the first one, credit Mateer a little bit he threw the interception, but he made a key tackle down there, or it's a pick 6. And then they get a turnover on the next play by Peyton Bowen. So that could have been, a big swing. It didn't happen. But he's got to be better. There's no two ways around it. You got 3 weeks to get ready for your next game, probably, around the 19th or 20th, but you got to be better than that if you expect to advance in this tournament, no doubt about it.
Well, that's part of the reason that I do feel a little bit better about Oklahoma going into the first round of that playoff is that they're going to have that extended period of a couple weeks here where they can go in, where it's almost, weather's going to be a little different, but you're kind of going into fall camp again in a way. And when they came out of fall camp and the way that John Mateer played in those first 4 weeks, if you get that version of him, then Oklahoma all of a sudden becomes the most dangerous team in this bracket with the way that their defense can play. So they have it all set ahead of them. I don't know if we can bank on John Mateer coming back to form, but if you can, Oklahoma is the last place that you want to go and play in this playoff.
One of the things that, and one of the reasons coaches like, getting into bowl games is you get that extra practice, like you were just talking about. And, Jason and I have been around this game a long time. And there's things that you can do now, Jason, as you know, and Matthew, as well, that you can take and go, okay, let's really dig into the film because we got a week, 2 weeks, we can really cut this stuff up and figure out where it is. Because during the season, it's almost impossible to make those kind of changes. It is, however, if you get 2 extra weeks off, that's like 2 buys and you're ready to rock and roll. So I think that is going to help. To what extent, we don't know, but it's certainly not going to hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
agree. I think that you would really have to me, I think that there's some other things at play here. You have a strong backup quarterback, in my opinion, that's every bit as good and has speed, and they like to run the RPO and a lot of quarterback plus one quarterback run plays. I'd like to see a little Michael Hawkins just in some packages now that you have the time to kind of work some of that in. I think that there's been some of the main OU media and guys that have played there before, like Teddy Lehman, have said he'd like to see them fire the RPO into the sun. I would almost agree with that as well because they've struggled with it a lot this year, and just in the decision making has been part of it. But I'll be honest with you, I think that I would think that in this amount of time, you're looking at probably 3 weeks, right around 3 weeks of time between your last game and going into this first playoff round game. No matter where you play it, it looks like they could line up for a home game, but no matter where it's played, you've got time to you could change a lot of things. And because you're going to have film, everybody's got film on you at this point, and not a lot of it's good, but, I would think that they could really dig in. They've got a former offensive coordinator there as well, and Kevin Wilson, who was there back during the Sam Bradford years. And, those guys that were there, that was basically the best offense in Oklahoma history with DeMarco Murray and Sam Bradford and those guys. This is a guy that you can lean on if you're Ben Arbuckle as an offensive coordinator. And how do we kind of get this thing shored up and cleaned up a little bit? Because if they play clean, they're going to have an opportunity to win every game. They're going to this defense is going to put you in a position to be in every game and have an opportunity to win. If you can continue to score at times when it's important, I think you can do that.
Let me ask a question to Jason and to you, Matthew. Matthew with Georgia and Jason, of course, with Oklahoma. This time off, is there going to be any players who are going to benefit from it because of either injury or just playing a little banged up?
Oh, yeah. On the Georgia front, you've got like half the roster, it feels like, that's either out or dealing with something. You look at the rosters of both Georgia and Alabama heading into this SEC championship game, and you just see key guys missing across the board. Chauncey Bowens didn't play last week against Georgia Tech for Georgia. I think they may have masked just how hurt he was to an extent. Mm-hmm. I think he has a chance to come back and play in a somewhat limited role this week. Drew Bobo is a guy who they lost last week against Georgia Tech. Not really sure.
That's a big loss, isn't it?
Yeah, it's massive, especially when you've got Tim Keenan standing across from you and you're starting a redshirt freshman in Drew Bobo's place. So those are the two guys. And then for Georgia, obviously you're going to have guys dinged up on the backside defensively. So they've got injuries across the board. It really is going to come down to they need this win in Atlanta simply for the time off factor. Because if you don't get the win in Atlanta and then you host a playoff game, while yes, you are probably going to be hosting someone of a G5 or potentially a Virginia ACC champion, it lessens the time that you have to get healthy, and that is such a key factor that plays into these championship games, these first round matchups.
Jason,
Yeah, as far as Oklahoma's concerned,
I was just saying, go ahead, give me Oklahoma there.
Yeah, I think that really it'll give you some time. You've got some time right now to get your running back room healthy, and that's been one of the major things. When they run the ball well, Oklahoma's been a lot better, especially obviously offensively, having more balance there. And they've got two really good running backs in Xavier Robinson, who is a second-year sophomore. He's had some big games coming down the stretch. True freshman in Torrey Blaylock, who's been really a highlight for this Oklahoma offense since day one, and he's played hurt for most of the year. But they really, Xavier Robinson was definitely banged up a little bit in the LSU game. Torrey Blaylock had some big runs in that game, but you can tell that he's a little banged up too. They've got some other guys that might benefit from. You might get a little bit of time as well coming up, and getting into the rotation and practices. But I think that just getting those two guys healthy should be a big help for them on that side. R. Mason Thomas, as I talked about, he went out in that Tennessee game after causing the fumble or getting that fumble and then stiff arming for 25 yards to score a touchdown. It was a long touchdown run too, but he got hurt on the play. We hadn't seen him since. The hope is that you get him back. I believe it might have been a torn quad, so the hope is that maybe you get him back in that situation. The good news, of course, for Oklahoma is that's where they're the most deep, is at that edge position, and particularly along the D-line altogether. But that would be another help for that. Obviously, Gentry Williams as well. We're hoping to kind of see a little bit more of him. He's a veteran corner that you've had some really good cornerback play out of young guys out of Oklahoma too. But this is a guy that's been around. He's an NFL-type player. He's had some injury issues throughout his career, but if he's healthy enough to play, they'll certainly have him in the game on that side of the ball also.
Hey, another note I'll add, Oklahoma, big Georgia fans this weekend. The way the seeding works, they're sitting at 8, Alabama's at 9. So if Alabama were to win that game, then Oklahoma's going to get pushed back, and they will no longer be hosting a playoff game.
I think that could be the case. I think that what was signaled with the rankings yesterday was more of a line of they're going to make it into the playoff one way or the other. Mm-hmm. But if they win this game, then they could definitely, they're going to bump up into that top echelon where they're going to be hosting for sure. Mm-hmm. I don't even know that they'd end up playing Oklahoma in that way, but Oklahoma would definitely bump backwards probably, and not going to bump further. They're not going to bump Georgia past them as far as backwards past them, I don't believe. Yeah. You probably do need to see Georgia win this game, which is why it's concerning a little bit that Kirby has struggled so much with Alabama throughout, even since Kalen DeBoer took over.
Yeah.
Let's talk a second about something Jason and Matt and I talked about yesterday. Were you surprised that so many teams in the SEC and, frankly, other schools around the country went down and hired G5, G6 coaches to go to premier programs all across the country?
Was I surprised? No, I honestly, throughout all the Lane stuff, and I'm a Lane Kiffin guy. I think he's a good coach. I don't think that should garner as much love as he gets, though. To me, I thought that the best coach in the cycle that everybody was talking about was John Summerall. So I think that Florida struck out and hit a home run in the same at bat. You know what I mean? They were really, really high on Kiffin, wanted him really bad. I thought that they ended up with the best possible scenario for them. I think John Summerall has proven to be a winner at every stop. He won at Troy. He was winning big at Tulane. He gave Oklahoma all they could handle last year with Darian Mensah and that group there at Tulane in that early. It was, I think, week 3 or week 4 that they played them. But anyway, he was, Tulane's a real deal, and I think that I thought that he was the best one. I also think that some of these other guys we're talking about, Alex Golish, heck, he beat Florida at the Swamp this year in week 2 or 3. I like him. Yeah, I like him a lot. And then, not that I'm an Oklahoma State fan at all, but I thought that they did really well with Eric Morris. Yeah. I thought that was a big pickup for them as far as his ability to kind of develop quarterbacks and stuff. And right now they need everything that they can get there. So to me, I feel like the guys that you've seen get jobs so far, and I even really liked what Kentucky did as far as they in about 12 hours they fired Stoops and had another coach in place in 12 hours, and it's Will Stein, who's had back-to-back Heisman finalists the last couple of years, and guys that send to the NFL. I think that's big for them. My question I was going to ask you guys, what the hell's going on at Penn State? They fire their coach so early, and now we're late in the cycle. All the best coaches seem to be gone, and they're still there without a coach. What's going on?
Okay. I actually had conversations this morning with some people about this. Okay. And here's what I'm going to preface it by saying it is my understanding based on, I have no firsthand knowledge of this. I'm simply going off of what a very trusted person told me. And that is Jimmy Sexton has frozen them out. And he is not, they had a plane flying to a couple of different places. And Jimmy Sexton picked up the phone and said, turn the damn plane around because we're not even talking to you. It goes back, and again, I have no firsthand knowledge of this. I am only going off of the person who I trusted who told me this, that there was a great deal of racial overtones toward James Franklin at Penn State. And, we all know the famous line from James Carville, who said, Pennsylvania is Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Alabama in the middle. He never really was accepted there. He got a lot of grief. His wife, his family got a lot of grief off the field. He never once, because James Franklin is a class act, never once did he ever bring it up. He did bring it up constantly to the athletic director, who didn't seem to feel compelled to do anything about it. So when he left, when you have an agent like Jimmy Sexton, who controls a hell of a lot of good coaches, and he says, you know what, screw them. None of my guys are going there. So I don't know what's going to happen. They're looking at they're going way out to BYU, to Boomers country. The coach.
But they already signed. They re-signed Kalani. They re-signed Kalani last night. So that's out too.
That ship has sailed. I don't know. I don't know where they go.
It looked like, it appeared that this afternoon they had shifted their focus to Jeff Brom and Brian Dable, but recently Brom has come out and told the Louisville representatives that he will be staying there. So mark another one off the board for Penn State. The further along the line we get down this, just based on some of the figures that were reported, and I've been watching some of the Penn State players, specifically their linebacker room on X right now is having a field day kind of with the fans, just kind of jabbing with them here, there, and everywhere, talking about agents, this and everything else. But at this point, there seems to be a lot of player support for Terry Smith. And based on the number they were willing to throw at Kalani Sitake, at this point, I don't think that Terry Smith is an X's and O's guy that is going to be your answer. I'm not sure he's necessarily the CEO that's going to be the answer. But if you have struck out so many times, at this point, throw all of that money And instead of paying a head coach, pay your coordinators, pay your position coaches, and throw it into your NIL pool. And you support everything but the head coach in terms of your financial investment, and hire Terry Smith if the players love him that much. At this point, it seems like it might be the easiest path for Penn State.
Something's going to have to happen because this even hurt them. They only ended up the last I saw.
They've signed 2 guys.
They've got like 2 of their recruits that they're able to hold on to right now, and that's not a good thing. And then who's to say what are you going to lose in the portal whenever it opens in January? If you don't get this thing shored up soon, you better be throwing a ton of money in the direction of these guys. But they better be able to trust this guy. And I don't know that going with the consensus pick among players is usually the best way to go about it. Mm-hmm. We've seen that not work in the NFL. We've seen that not work at the college level as well. I go back, it immediately makes me think of Jim Tom Sula with the 49ers. I used to call him the pizza delivery guy. I didn't understand why he was ever that coach. But to me, it's just one of those things that, look, you got to find somebody that has some kind of cachet. And to be honest with you, you could see this coming when they made what I feel like is a knee-jerk reaction. I'm not even the biggest James Franklin fan, but I would tell you that I thought it was a knee-jerk reaction. I couldn't believe that they fired him as they were a semifinalist in the college football playoff a year ago. Mm-hmm. And to do that early in the season, it was a bad loss, but I mean, good grief. At some point, you got to, have some perspective here. It also feels like it's been a one-man show in terms of who's going to pick the new coach. I think that's also a bad sign when all is said and done. And like you said, I actually heard the same thing that you did earlier this morning, Jim, about Jimmy Sexton freezing them out. They kind of blackballed them themselves, at least as far as his coaches are concerned.
Right.
And he represents the lion's share of college football coaches that are coaching at least in Power 5 circles.
Well, two of his cohorts are also, former Jimmy Sexton, worked under Jimmy. So if Jimmy's freezing people out, you can bet, at the very least they're going to make people sweat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that's going to be tough. I mean, it's going to be tough for Penn State. And,
zero leverage left. Zero leverage.
They got nothing.
I mean,
they got. Yeah. I mean, they're good. I'll tell you what. There's some guys out at Allegheny High School near Pittsburgh who might take that job and do better than some of these guys that might be left. But
good grief, it's wild. Yeah. It's a wild situation. I can't believe that we've watched it get to this point, because even after everything with the the Sandusky stuff and all that, they had really built. So it felt like they had built something over the next even few years. And certainly under James Franklin, they've gotten a lot better. The only teams they haven't beaten have been those top 5 teams that are in their conference and throughout the country. But they've been right up there winning 10 games. If you're perennial 10 games a year and you get fired unceremoniously that way, it makes it hard to understand. It makes it hard to believe that you would get a big-time client, a big-time guy just frothing at the mouth to go take that job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, you had mentioned about the recruiting and all that. I got to believe that Penn State South is going to be Virginia Tech.
I mean,
those kids are going with James Franklin, wherever he coached. And Virginia Tech is not going to have a hard time, recruiting people or playing in the portal, because Franklin, people know who James Franklin is as a
They're going to look a lot different this time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's going to be back to the good old Beamer ball days, not the not the little son, but the big guy. It's going to be one of those things where, remember the back there in the day, Jason, where it was hell to go to Blackbird to play. Well, it's going to be hell to go to Blackbird and play again.
They brought their lunch pail to work with them, man. I remember those defenses. Those defenses were ridiculous.
Oh, my God. Yeah, Beamer ball. It was in that place, it's not big, right? But it reminds me a lot of West Virginia, where the fans are just, they're there at 7 o'clock in the morning waiting for the game to start.
Yeah, listen, I think it's very similar. I've always looked at it as very similar to the way, the vicinity of where they are too, it almost feels like an SEC program, just the way that they get behind it, similar to Clemson or somebody like that. That they're just, they love their football out there in South Carolina and West Virginia and places like that, and Virginia as well. So to me, Virginia Tech, it's a fun one. I think that's going to be. I think it's big time for them over the next couple of years. And he'll turn it around quick. James is a good coach. I haven't looked at him as necessarily elite, but I tell you what, up until the NIL time, nobody was winning at Vandy. He won at Vandy. You know what I mean? He won at Vandy pre-NIL. So the guy knows what he's doing for sure.
What about Jimbo? Is Jimbo resurface in this scenario where perhaps he ends up at Penn State?
Man, that's a great question. I hadn't really thought of him in this situation, but it might be. They may be just desperate enough to go get Jimbo.
Yeah, I mean, you would have to that's nuclear launch type threat that we're facing there. If you're Penn State going to get James Franklin, or going to get Jimbo Fisher. I mean, that's a guy who really made a career off of that 2013 season. I mean, he did some good stuff at Florida State, but that's where he made his career off of that 1 year. I mean, what he did at Texas A&M was nothing. He had every resource in the world at Texas A&M. He brought in every recruiting class in the world at Texas A&M, and he couldn't win there. Mike Elko's in year 2, and he's 11-1 right now. So yeah, I don't know what leg Jimbo Fisher would have to stand on other than the fact that Penn State just needs someone. So
that was my point. I mean, I wasn't
and he does
advocating that
recruit
Jimbo
well.
Fisher.
If they have money, he does recruit well. I don't think it's a terrible thought, to be honest with you. I do think it's definitely would be from that, completely they're just looking for whatever they can get. But a guy like that, if he was willing to kind of evolve a little bit, because I think the biggest thing that was going on with Jimbo was that he was smelling himself a little too much, and didn't want to change anything. Bring in Bobby Petrino, and you say you're going to let him call the plays. You knew that wasn't happening. It didn't happen. You knew it wasn't going to, but it didn't. There was no reason why they needed to keep him around, especially when you are putting the kind of money into it that A&M was willing to put in. So, I think that it's clear that would he allow himself to change? We've heard him say, and you only seen him a little bit this year, say that he'd like to get back into coaching. I don't know. It would take a lot. But this may be the type of situation that could see him get back there into coaching, and in a place like Penn State. Look, but you're going to have to get in there and win. And I don't know, just me. I mean, character-wise, I don't know that you need a possible character problem in Happy Valley at this point. I don't know that you can really withstand it. So
the one thing though, from Jimbo's standpoint, is he doesn't need the money. If
that's true,
if he comes back and says, "Look, I'll coach, and take less money than what Franklin was getting," who knows?
Well, and that's the thing, is they're still paying James Franklin for they're paying James Franklin $50 million, and to leave them without. In a bad position. They're the craziest thing I can even think of, Jim. It's wild to me that this is where it's got to. They made the move early to be early in the cycle and get a guy that could be a splash higher. I didn't understand the talk about Matt Rule. I don't think that Matt Rule has lived up to his billing at all at Nebraska. In fact, it feels like he's running away from competition. Right. I don't know why they felt like they wanted him, but that didn't even work out. So, to me, this is just a historic, boneheaded move by Penn State in all the way around.
It stemmed from, based on what I heard, Jim. I don't know anything about the potential, the race factor in it, but based on what I had seen and heard, it was more about James Franklin. And he didn't really embrace, there's still a lot of love for Joe Paterno at Penn State. He he didn't buy into a lot of that, like the boosters and some of the administrators really wanted him to.
Can't
And I
blame
think
him for that.
was a disconnect up there.
Can't blame him for that though either.
No,
how could you buy in?
No,
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely
I
not.
don't want to hear about that stuff. I mean, this guy, it's been proven that Joe Pa knew what was going on and hid it and helped hide it for all those years. If you're James Franklin, you distance yourself from that as much as possible.
Yeah.
Well, they distanced themselves when they started back. Remember, they put themselves on what in essence was as close as you could get to the death penalty.
Mm-hmm.
And they brought in Billy O'Brien, who did given what he had to do,
he did a great job.
O'Brien did really well, and the only reason he left was he had an opportunity to go coach in the pros, and that's what got James Franklin there. So, but he, I remember getting a phone call saying, you got to get headed for State College because they're taking Joe Pa's statue down. And by the time that they made the announcement, his statue was gone. And so the university itself went out of its way to distance themselves from Joe Paterno.
You had to. I mean, it's the biggest scandal I feel like in college football history. I don't think there's anything over the top of it, including the SMU stuff, all that recruiting. I mean, I could care less about that really. I think it was good theater, but I would tell you that this is the biggest black eye that college football's ever really had. And this we're talking about a sport that's got plenty of black eyes in its history, but there's nothing worse than what we're talking about with Penn State. I don't know why they would have ever expected James Franklin to give a shit about that. Excuse my language.
That's okay.
I wouldn't have wanted anything to do with it myself. I would have been like, get that away from me. No.
Right. Yeah. Let that be part of history we don't talk about.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Other than what we're not anymore.
Right.
Absolutely. We are the anti-former Penn State. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Right.
That's crazy. It's crazy stuff.
Go ahead.
I was going to say it's been bad up to this point. Let Brian Dable say no, and let's see what happens. I mean that if they don't get him in there, I can't tell you where this thing's headed. I really can't. It'd be. I mean, Pat Kraft's. If they don't get Dable, Pat Kraft might as well just go ahead and hand his letter of resignation in, because otherwise they're gonna fire him. That's like the only two options. Even if things go well, like they do hire Dable and say they're able to kind of rebuild something here, I still would have to seriously consider looking into Pat Kraft and where his future lies. This has been just an utter embarrassment for that university in terms of a head coaching search, and he's made sure to put himself at the forefront of them.
Absolutely, and it and it's all been on Pat Kraft too, So to me, and Brian Dable, I mean, if I'm Brian Dable, I don't know that I'd take the job just under the fact that, look, as good of a reputation as he had going into getting that Giants job, it's been seriously tarnished. You can't afford to go into another bad situation and have no success. Your coaching career becomes non-existent at that point. You're a coordinator forever. And maybe he already is, but so maybe he does take it. But to me, I agree with you. I think that if you don't find a way to get him in there, and now you are in deep trouble, because the problem with Brian Daboll is that he only spent a year as a coordinator as it was. He's not known for recruiting. It's not. He's an NFL guy. It doesn't always work out that way. I think it could work at Penn State. But recruiting wise, I think it's going to be tough, and they're definitely going to have to. The price of doing business just went up for Penn State. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's where they're fully going to be dependent on letting their money talk at that point.
The other thing they did by putting Franklin out was they cut off the New Jersey, Delaware Valley, Maryland, Virginia recruiting pipeline that James Franklin lived on. And, that's that's death to Penn State because you know they're not going to. You know, this is not a team. I'm sorry, this is not a program that recruits nationally much. They live off that pipeline, and you know, I here's we have a question from somebody talking about Matt Campbell will be a decent hire for Penn State. What do you think, guys?
He would.
I think he'd be a home run. I think
Yeah.
it's if that was going to happen, it already happened though. I don't see that happening at all. Matt Campbell's shown that he loves Iowa State, and I mean he's turned down other jobs in the Big Ten already in the past. I don't really see that he would make the move, especially at this point. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he's a Jimmy Sexton guy. So
Yeah,
I don't really, I don't know. I feel like he'd be I think as I said there, he'd be a 9th inning grand slam with 2 outs. But I don't think it's happening. I don't think it's happening.
Yeah. I think, like you said, it's got to be DeBall. I mean, if they don't get him, I don't think it happens. What you gonna do?
Yeah.
And of course, there's still people pissed off with the Giants situation with what they did with Saquon Barkley.
That was the beginning of the end for Brian Daboll.
Right. And he had nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Wasn't even his call.
No.
Hey, their Giants GM Joe Schoen went on, did his press conference and tried to take credit for them drafting Jackson Dart when there's video evidence of him saying, "Hey, man, if you believe in him like this, then yeah, I guess we'll take him," which I thought was funny.
Yeah, well, if you're a Giant fan, there's not much funny that over the past couple of years that you're, it's
not when the Eagles win with your guy.
Right. And you got linebackers who were fantastic, who ended up over there and now they're in Miami. So, I don't know what to tell you, boys and girls. He gives up on people that that end up being, all pros. So, not necessarily he's not George Young. Let's put it that way when it comes to general managers for the Giants. But let's downshift. We talked. Matt and I've discussed a little bit, Jason, and I'd like to get your input on it. Is ESPN's Game Day leaning a little too heavy into personality and less into what's actually going on?
I think for what you're hoping that it is, I'm among the people. I actually like Pat McAfee. Okay,
yeah.
I think he's definitely taken over that set and it's turned much more into that boisterous and everything else. But I think they kind of balanced it with Nick Saban. I think that Nick Saban being there gives it a little bit more credibility, I would say, as far as and that kind of stuff. But to me, I feel like I don't dislike it, and I've always been a big Game Day fan. I think that it's evolving with the times, though, and more than anything else. I think that those two guys kind of working together, because you've seen Pat McAfee, and Nick's going to be your straight man. He's just going to be your straight guy. That's how he is. But he's very pointed in the things that he says. He's somebody that's believable. When it comes all down to it, he's the GOAT when it comes to coaches. So, it's I think it's worked out pretty well for that myself. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah. Listen, I like the dynamic they have going on. I had made note that they've definitely changed their vibe, kind of shifted their vibe a little more towards kind of like a party environment on game day, which fits Pat McAfee's brand. The dynamic,
and it fits the SEC also.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you can go back, look at the 2 times they've been to Atlanta with Pat McAfee on the set, and look at his picks. Look at the crowd reaction. See the way it's gone. There's a reason they hired Pat McAfee. They knew what direction they were headed. They steered into it. The only thing that now is the front office sports had that piece out about, is it a conflict of interest for Nick Saban when he's getting himself involved in some of these head coaching searches at LSU? Is it a conflict of interest? They reached out to ESPN, and ESPN said no thanks on the comment.
Yeah, I don't know that I think that it is. I mean, I think that it's more. I mean, he knows the guy. If somebody's asking, given if he's been a coach under you and you've been kind of a mentor to him, who else the hell would you call about him?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know. I mean, as far as like, just because he's on ESPN, he's not allowed to be still an expert, and he can't, you know. If anything, I bet Alabama's not all that excited about it. You know,
Yeah.
I would tell you that Bama probably hates it, but I mean, I understand that too. But I don't see it as a conflict of interest myself. But I would probably defer to you, Jim, on that question, though, more than anything, because you've been in this business longer than I have. And do you feel like for ESPN that should be a problem? I don't really think that it should be, but
No, it never has been. You know, you hire people, you know, personalities and others to make comments, okay? But you don't take away from them their relationships with people. So, you know, as a programmer, yeah, if I'm ESPN, I would have answered the response. I would have said, you know what, almost what you just said, Jason. I would have said, you know, Coach Saban is Coach Saban, right? He's got people who are part of his coaching tree. He's got friends. He's got all kinds of stuff. And he wouldn't be the first one, by the way, to who's on television to advise somebody, you know, in the business.
Publicly endorse,
right?
You know,
whatever. I mean, it's done all the time. So the fact that I believe that the real problem that ESPN had ended up with him this year was, in this situation with Lane, was the drama. There was just so much drama around it that, you know, suddenly Lane's standing at the lectern and saying, well, you know, I talked to Coach Saban and I talked to Coach Carroll, and you know, they both told me, you know, pretty much the same thing. And, you know, it's like this. So, so they got drug into to Lane's problem. It's not Nick's problem. It's not Pete's problem. It's Lane's problem. And then ESPN gets in the middle of it, and by not responding, you know, the worst thing you can do in television specifically is not to respond to something.
Get ahead of it.
Yeah, you get ahead of it, or at the very least say, look, what Coach Saban does is Coach Saban's business. You know, when he's on our set, he is there, you know, and he gets to comment on whatever he wants to comment on. And if you either like it or you don't. I mean, you know, if you're going to do that kind of stuff, you know, then you're never going to like McAfee because he has a comment on everything.
True.
So
yeah, and as far as like, when it comes to what Saban was saying too about letting him coach, I didn't necessarily agree with that. I understood wholeheartedly why Ole Miss said, hell no, we're not doing this. You know, it makes perfect sense. But to me, a lot of what Saban had to say was absolutely correct in that, look, you cannot blame this solely on Lane Kiffin. Some of it you can blame on Lane Kiffin. I'll give you that. But I would tell you, this is an NCAA problem. This is a calendar problem. This is a not trying to. You've got to stop trying to fit everything to the academic calendar when we are far beyond this being an academic. This is professional football light. Stop acting like it has it. The academic calendar really has anything to do with anything, because it doesn't. Match everything up. Make sure that everybody's going at the same time. In the NFL, you don't get to talk to these guys until it's playoff time. And you can only talk to coaches during off weeks during the playoffs too. There's no reason why you couldn't do that at the NCAA level. As much as I would tell you that I think that Lane helped make it into the circus that it was, I would also tell you that it would be very easy to stop the circus immediately if the NCAA did what it was supposed to do for once. For once, you know.
The quote from Cardell Jones back in the early 2010s, he said, "We're here to play football. We're not here to play school," has never been truer. That's what people are there to do. You're no longer there to get an education. It's on the back burner. It's important for some people, and that's good. That's still out there. But for a lot of these guys, they are here to get a check, and they are here to move on to the NFL.
It's a
That is,
business,
it
period,
is a
end of story.
business. That is the way it is going, and that's what I've prefaced every single time when I talk about this. I said I understand the move for Lane Kiffin. It is the correct move in terms of a career choice. Like this, LSU is the better place. You have a higher floor. You have a higher ceiling at LSU year in and year out, bar none, easily, no question about it. The problem was always the way that Lane Kiffin went about it. That was always going to be the issue with the way they did it. But in terms of the entire hiring cycle and the when guys got fired and kind of when guys got hired, is that cycle is going to continue for as long as you have the head coaching carousel that you have right now and the calendar that you have right now. Until they fix the calendar, you're going
The
to
transfer portal, recruiting, signing day being today is out of whack with the rest of the calendar.
Well, I see Brandon here talking about Chris Kleiman potentially being a good hire for Penn State. Kleiman announced his retirement today. Like he's not he's not young, but he's not at the back end of his career necessarily. I think he opted for a little bit of an early retirement, and that you're going to continue to see that as time goes on. These early exits from college football in the head coaching ranks because of how stressful this period of time right here is.
Guys,
one thing I would tell you, it's definitely been stressful for Kleiman. I'm sorry, just to bring up the Kleiman point. You saw where he kind of broke down after the Utah game a couple of weeks ago, and I think that there's been a lot of they've been pushing for this retirement in back channeling and through some of their boosters. They wanted to bring in Colin Klein. I think that when Oklahoma State started speaking about the possibility of bringing him in and him being a candidate, it kind of moved that up. I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up with another job in the future. I don't know that it's right now, but to me, that looked like that was kind of ugly for Chris. And I think they've had some struggles the past couple of years, but I think he felt like he got pushed out here, and
he probably did.
He did get pushed out.
Yeah,
he did. Yeah.
I'm old enough since dinosaurs roamed the earth as I came out of school. But I was in the building the day that Bo Schembechler decided to fire Bill Frieder and give the Michigan team to Steve Fisher, and it was there was no transfer portal in those days. There was no NIL in those days. There was just do you want to coach here or don't you? And when Frieder started flirting with the idea that he wanted to coach at Arizona State, Bo basically just said, no problem. But what happened with Bo is that Bo got campus security. They went to Frieder's office. They packed up everything Frieder had. Frieder had a car which belonged obviously to Michigan. He turned the keys to the car in, and they, basically
left him on the sidewalk.
No, they didn't. They didn't do that. But they called him a car and put everything in the car and sent him home. And
wow.
That was it. I mean, there was no last minute thing where as we saw with Lane, being given the Mississippi State troopers were out there in front of his car, taking him out to the airport so he could get out on the LSU planes. No, there was none of that. Frieder was out. You want to coach here, you don't want to coach here. If you don't want to coach here, not a problem.
Yeah.
I want a Michigan man. Wow. Fisher's my man. And I'm not saying that Ole Miss is going to win a national championship like that Michigan team did, but it's you got to feel bad for the kids. I mean, for the players that this whole they went 11-1. They played like above what Ole Miss normally plays, and now
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
they're gonna have to get it and done, and in some ways it might galvanize these guys to play harder, under the
I think
circumstances.
it's tough though. I think it's a tough deal, and I think it was a tough decision for Ole Miss to make in
Mhm.
view of the fact that, I mean, yeah, they let Charlie Weiss Jr. go back to be the OC. He wasn't the play caller,
Right.
that was still Lane Kiffin. They game planned and did some of the stuff they were doing, but this is Lane Kiffin's football team.
Mhm.
So I find it hard for that to work out. I definitely think I agree with people that think there's no way you could let him stay, and when you're with a rival, now you just went to the enemy, which is
Right.
definitely one of their enemies there at Ole Miss. Is
Mhm.
one of their yearly rivals is going to be
Mhm.
LSU. So yeah, I think that they had to do it, but I do think that it's tough for them. I find it hard to believe that it won't. I mean, I think they get past the first rounder.
Mhm.
Whoever their first round, if they're going to get one of the G5 teams, it looks like they will. Um, but I don't see them getting any further than that. I think it's going to be tough for them to get any further than that, and just because of the fact that I don't know what to think of Pete Golding. I don't, as a head coach. I mean, this is you're going to cut your teeth in the playoff. Yikes! You know what I mean? And he's not an offensive guy, and they're led by offense. So I feel
Mhm.
like it's a tough deal for them, and it sucks. It does suck for the players, man. Definitely sucks for the players, but I don't think it's going to end in them winning the national championship. To be honest
How
with you,
many of them? How many of those Ole Miss players are going to be in LSU next year?
the
Not as many as
grand,
you think.
I think so. I think the quarterback situation. I think you end up with Simmons there for sure. Although maybe not if he likes Van Buren, you could definitely end up with that deal there. But I think he can go get anybody he wants as far as quarterbacks.
If I was saying that a quarterback's going to leave Ole Miss, I would say it's probably Chambliss. I think Simmons is
He
probably
doesn't
more
have any
likely to
eligibility
stay.
left though.
Does he
He doesn't
not?
have
I
any
thought he had.
eligibility.
I thought he had one more year. Um, no, Jason, to your point about whether or not this team can win a national title, it your opinion, I would say, is right there up with Lane Kiffin. Because if Lane Kiffin thought this team could win a national title, guess where he'd be? Oxford, Mississippi. So that's is cut and dry. He thought that his opportunity at LSU is better to win a national title moving forward than his opportunity to win a national title at Ole Miss this year.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think that that's a fair assessment too, because I mean, a lot of people were talking everything, all the mess down there in Louisiana with the governor and everything else
Mhm.
was definitely something that would have given me pause if I'm in his shoes in that situation, especially and not wanting to pay Brian Kelly. That's not a good look for them either. But I'll
Mhm.
say this LSU, since Nick Saban, they locked down the state of Louisiana in recruiting. And there's guys that nobody knows anything about. And you can look at the NFL, the best two receivers right now in the NFL were a 2-star and a no-star out of Louisiana that played at LSU. They've
Yep.
got those guys. You can lock down that state. And with him, he can recruit nationally. The Florida job, I think that the Florida job was a good job for him. It would have worked out really well for Lane.
Mhm.
But I do think that this is still a better situation because you can still recruit Florida just like you would have. You can still do that, but you can lock down Louisiana, and
Mhm.
it's definitely a better situation recruiting. Plus, they've pledged all that money to him already in NIL dollars. I mean, they pledged 25 million. The rev share isn't even 25 million,
Mhm. Yeah.
and they're already pledging that kind of money for players. It's a good situation for Lane. Now you better go win now if you're Lane Kiffin because you've got everything you should need to do
Mhm.
that. No more excuses about not being able to play the game the way the big boys do. You got to go play it now, and you better win. But
Mhm.
it's scary for us SEC guys that root for other teams.
Mhm.
Though, yesterday when I was Matt and I were on, I said, I don't think you know the coaches at Georgia, Alabama, Texas A&M, woke up yesterday morning going, "Oh my God, Lane Kiffin's at LSU."
At least on the recruiting trail, I'm not
Mhm.
sure they did. Because I don't think that Lane Kiffin, if he goes head to head with Kirby Smart on the recruiting trail, I don't think that's one that if you go back to the old model, that Lane Kiffin's going to be Kirby Smart on the recruiting trail. Dollars wise, yes, they can probably win. But Lane Kiffin's calling card has never been his ability to recruit the high school ranks. He's a fantastic play caller, really good schematically, and attacks the transfer portal really, really well. But his calling card was never high school recruiting.
But he doesn't have to be a great recruiter at LSU either.
Mm-hmm.
They can still lock down their high school recruiting in that state just by being who they are.
Yeah,
you see that. This is just the way it is. And Coach O being back in the system with them, that's what a great move for them on that part. Surprised me that they are allowing it, but Coach O is going to be back in the building too. He can help with that. I think this is a great situation for him. I don't think you're going to have any excuses if you're Lane. You're not.
Yeah, no, you can't.
What about, you're talking about Coach O. So does that mean Charlie Weiss Jr. is not the OC?
Oh, no, he is. Coach O will be back as defensive line coach. My guess is like recruiting coordinator probably or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because Blake Baker is supposedly the lead candidate for that Tulane job. I'll be interested to see what they do on the defensive side of the football if that move were to go through and Blake Baker finds himself in a different part of Louisiana next year.
Ooh. Well, and Tulane and LSU hate each other, so that
my gosh. Yeah.
Ooh. I don't know. I would feel like that's if you're Lane, you need to find a way to keep Blake around if you can.
They're gonna throw the house at him. They need to throw the house at him based on the way he's able to turn that defense around. I mean, man, were they awful and really all
2 years they were trash on defense, just awful.
Mm-hmm.
And they were really. I mean, I was in the stadium for Oklahoma LSU this past weekend. Their defense is legit under this guy. So I think that they'd be crazy to not pony up whatever they can to get him to stay around and hopefully he fits in with what Lane wants to do. But you got to find, if not, you better find somebody good. Because, and I don't really look at Coach O as a defensive coordinator. I think he would come in defensive line coach. He's going to be able to recruit really well at that position and be kind of an assistant head coach type of deal. But Blake Baker, he's going to let him do his thing. I mean, I think he did that pretty much with Golding as well. Just kind of let him do his thing and he did his. So it's worked before.
Yeah. All right. Some final thoughts, guys. Jason, what are you going to be looking for this week?
Hey, I'm looking forward to this matchup in Atlanta. I think that Kirby obviously 1-7 against Alabama, but it seems like even following that game in week 4, and it felt like they still have a stranglehold on this series at Alabama. They're still dominating it, but I'll be honest with you, they've kind of went in opposite directions since then. I think that Gunnar Stockton is fantastic. He's shown why they've stuck with him and wanted him to be the guy and didn't go and grab anybody in the portal last year, after last season, because they believe in the guy and he's shown why they believe in him. Their offenses look better. Their defense is getting to quarterbacks a lot more, something we've seen. Ty Simpson at the first part of the year, I'd say he's the best quarterback in the country without a doubt. I think the last, Oklahoma exposed a little something there on how you can get to him and force him into bad situations. They turned him over. He only had one interception going into that game, and they ended up turning him over 3 times. This is it's a good deal for, I think, with the way that Georgia's playing right now. You got to believe in them. I'm still going to pick Bama until I see Georgia beat them because I think it's a mental hurdle more than it is anything else than that. But I need to see Georgia do it. But I feel like Georgia has as good a chance as anybody. I think they're playing as well as anybody in the country right now. They should be able to find a way to win this game. They're at their second home in Atlanta. This is kind of what they do. The Georgia Tech game I'm going to throw out a little bit because we've seen them play a lot better than that leading up to that game. It's a rivalry game. You can never really – and Brink, he's done a great job with Georgia Tech as well. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this game. Even though, it doesn't involve Oklahoma. I think this is a big-time game. We're going to see if you can finally get over that hump. And How does Alabama deal with it if they don't win this game? You know, I think it's interesting. Lots of things that are interesting about it.
I don't think DeBoer's getting fired.
No. But his seat's going to heat up a little bit.
Oh yeah, that I get. But I'm just saying these people who are put him at Penn State, it's like, no, wait, just pump the brakes there. It's
I don't see that.
Oh man, it's from a programming standpoint. We're going back to TV. I don't understand how the SEC championship game's not on the prime time.
Prime time for the SEC is 2:30.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's always kind of been that way. I think that's probably what it is more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't change tradition.
Because the ACC is not going to pull a lot of eyeballs away from Ohio State and Indiana.
No.
Yeah. Can you blame anyone?
No, I'd think I'd watch something on Netflix.
Yeah. No, that's going to be a rough game.
And how did just real quick? How did the ACC not see this kind of stupidity coming and stick with division so that they could get the best teams in there?
I don't know.
Good grief!
Because they had to expand.
But even Jason, if they would have, let's say, got rid of the divisions, okay? You would take I would think you would take the two teams with the best records and play them against each other.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's that simple. If you that way you keep
it's not
from
hard.
having that crazy situation where Duke at 7-5 is playing in the championship game.
It's almost like those small conferences that they get one bid in the NCAA tournament, and you get the 9 seed with the last team in their conference or whatever somehow makes their run into the championship and they get the bid.
Right.
Okay, that's not going to happen though. Duke is going to win. If they win this game, that means they don't get in, and now you get a second G5 team in the dance, which I hate because I don't even like having one in there. I just think it's ridiculous. But to me, you got to do something about this, and I think it's gonna come to a head, especially if you have 2 G5s and you leave somebody like BYU out of there for not beating Texas Tech when they came in 11-1, and it's wild to me that that's going to happen. They're not going to leave Notre Dame out. Don't get it twisted. Notre Dame is not getting left out.
No.
I don't know about that. That was really the crux of my biggest thing coming in. When you listened to Hunter Yurachek last night, and I think everybody here's probably heard the saying, talking out of both sides of your mouth. I'm starting to wonder how many damn sides Hunter Yurachek has of his mouth. I mean,
I don't think he's got a clue what he's talking about. It's all BS from
He can't run a head coaching search. He's running the playoff committee, and he can't run a coaching search. They ended up with Ryan Silverfield, who couldn't beat a top 25 team. But that move that they made last night, it does a couple of things when they moved Alabama ahead of Notre Dame. One, Alabama is in the playoff, and I get it.
Sure.
By the numbers, that is the correct move the whole way. Why didn't you do it a couple weeks ago? Why'd you have to come back and correct it now? It makes no sense in the world. It feels like you're punishing Notre Dame for winning a football game by 29 points while Alabama won by 7. You're like, well, that win that Alabama had, because this was his words. They said, well, they ran the ball a little better. They had a 17-point lead. The game ended up tied. I mean, his explanation was mind-boggling. And then he tells us that when teams are ranked back to back, so like 11-12, that maybe they'll view head-to-head a little bit differently, and that teams that are idle this week can still move. He set the table that if Duke wins and BYU
that's where
loses,
it makes me feel like they are talking out of both sides of their mouth, no doubt about it. But that's what makes me believe that they're not moving Notre Dame out. Everybody look, no matter what, Miami beat Notre Dame in week 1. There's no two ways around it. I don't care if it's all the way back in week 1. And I'm not saying that it means they would beat them this time around. But head-to-head should matter. It has to matter. And no matter what, the fact that how Miami isn't in the conference championship game, that's part of the problem for them, though. But There's no way that you can literally say that it's the right thing to do to put Notre Dame in over Miami. But they're doing everything to tell you that they're going to put Notre Dame in over Miami. They're going to do it. And no matter what, you can attack anybody. There's a number of teams you can go with their resume and all that kind of stuff. Good luck with that. In the end, the only way that Notre Dame, it looks to me like they get left out, is if BYU wins against Texas Tech, because they're going to get the bid, and Tech is locked in. They're locked in on Tech for whatever reason. I don't think that they've played anybody in particular on their schedule either, but they're winning by 25 points or more in almost every game. So our all 11 victories are over 20. So, it's been that kind of year. I don't think, again, I'm not the biggest Texas Tech believer, and I don't know that BYU played the schedule that you need to play to be able to surpass whoever. Neither did Notre Dame, really. But I'll tell you this, Notre Dame is that golden dome they love. If the Northeast, I was watching something earlier that the Northeast doesn't, and I agree with this, they don't care about college football per se in Boston and New York and places like that. But they do care about Notre Dame. If Notre Dame is there, you get the eyes on the college football playoff in the most densely populated part of the country. Without Notre Dame in it, they don't give a crap. I think that puts them in, myself.
Jason, to your point on that, the New York newspapers, okay, they don't cover Rutgers. They cover Notre Dame. Notre Dame still has an outlet, in New York. They have a radio station that carries all the games. In Boston, what's the biggest football game of the year? When Notre Dame plays Boston College.
Yep.
It's just not, these are pro towns. Everything goes around pro. The biggest thing in Boston when it comes to college is the Bean Pot, which is a hockey tournament every year between Northeastern, Harvard, BYU, Boston College, and Boston U.
And BU, yeah.
And they all play at the Garden, and those tickets are hard to get. 17,000 tickets, and and they're the toughest tickets in town. It's not college football. Never has been, never will be. But they definitely are Notre Dame people, and the networks happen to be in New York, and they know that Notre Dame moves the needle.
They know where the numbers go, and when you look at the college football championship game, there was a lot of eyeballs on that game and it being a Ohio State Notre Dame game made it even bigger for them.
Right.
I think that they're going to do everything in their power to put Notre Dame in every year. Now, I think that Notre Dame is probably looking at the changes that they're making to how they're supposed to be picking it. I wouldn't surprise me if they just at some point went to an AI model, an algorithm of some kind that puts in what they want. Because if you got guys like Hunter Yurachek, to your point, Matt, these guys are idiots. They're going to find a way to let their biases in.
Yeah. Anything to get Hunter Yurachek off my TV on Tuesday nights. Give me
the computers, man. Give me the computers.
Yeah, anything. I will say, I would have a problem if they did move Miami in, just because at this point, Miami's idle too. They're not playing in a conference title either. You can blame that on them. You can blame that on the ACC. You can blame that on either one of them.
Sure.
They're not playing in a conference title either. And everybody got up in arms about if Texas doesn't make it, then we need to, we're going to reevaluate the non-conference scheduling. In that case, Notre Dame has a better argument than Texas does, because if they don't play A&M, guess what? They're a one-loss football team, and you don't have a question about where they are. They're sitting firmly inside of that top 12. They played two games. They lost by a combined total of 4 points to two top 10 football
with
teams.
A freshman quarterback, and you had a bad call in the A&M game, a terrible call that set up them winning that game as it worked.
You're a CJ Daniels catch and a holding call away from being 12-0 if you're Notre Dame. I think it's the right call to have Notre Dame in. They're better on the metrics. I understand the head-to-head. They're better in the metrics. They've been a better football team since those first two games. They've gotten better week over week. And quite honestly, Miami is in the weakest conference, in the weakest power conference, and they still managed to lose 2 football games against the 2 best teams that they played on that schedule.
Mario Cristobal is he's good for at least one of those a year. The guy is gonna be, yeah, you might as well call it Cristobaling. Like the old Tebow and Cristobal.
Right.
Yeah, the guy is just it's wild to me that they wonder why this continues to happen. It's your head coach, fellas. He can mess this up at any time. Yep. And who's to say that it wouldn't be, even if he was in the conference championship game, how much belief would you have in him? I didn't think there was a chance in hell they go to the Cold in Pittsburgh and win last week. They did, but it surprised me. It would not surprise me in the least if they would lose to Duke. It just wouldn't.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we got to get moving here, but before we do, Jason, thanks so much for joining us. Shameless plug time. Tell people about where they can find your stuff and, all that great work that you do.
Man, I appreciate it. Appreciate you having me on. I always enjoy sitting in with you guys. And Hall of Fame college football, as it says right there. It's at HOF-CFB right here on YouTube. We go about 3 times a week in the morning time at 9:30 Central. It'd be 10:30 Eastern time, and then we go Tuesday nights, Thursday nights at 8:30 Eastern time on a couple of different shows that we do there. So been enjoying the season. The SEC coming to an end there, but the playoffs. I'm excited about the whole thing, man. It's we're gonna see a lot. I think that you're gonna see a lot more craziness going on because of these playoff bids. I'm ready for this week. It's going to be a blast.
Well, you're coming back, so awesome. we're gonna bring you back, and anytime you need one of us, we're here to help you out.
Appreciate you. Thanks for having me, Jim.
Hey, thank you very much for being here, Jason. And Matthew, some final thoughts before we go.
Final thoughts. Georgia, Alabama, obviously going to be your headline matchup, even with 1 and 2 playing up there in Indianapolis this weekend. Jason did it really well when he talked about it earlier. This is a game that everything points in the direction of Georgia. It felt like Alabama had to thread a needle earlier this year. They're missing a lot of key weapons. Josh Cuevas, their tight ends, out with injury. Odds are Jam Miller's also going to be out with injury. Those were 2 of your biggest factors up in Athens earlier this year that aren't going to be available. Obviously, you've got injuries on Georgia's side as well. Everything points to Georgia winning this football game, which is exactly why I think Alabama's going to win it. I've seen this story far too many times under Kirby Smart. I mean, dear God. At 2021, they should have ran them out the building. 2023, they had no business beating them, and they did it anyways. So I think the same rang true when they visited Athens this year, and yet they still find ways to win football games. So, I'll pick Alabama all this week until Kirby Smart and Georgia's able to beat them.
Reverse the curse.
Right.
I love it.
One way of doing it. All right, boys. To pay the bills before we leave, let's run the spot. Matt, you're going to talk about it after we come back. Thanks to Zach for being part of the show.
Yeah. Big shout out to Zach Bobo Real Estate, sponsor of the show. He does all things real estate, buy, sell, invest in the state of Georgia. Doesn't matter where you are, he will make sure to get to you. So give him a call at that number that Jim just flashed on the screen there.
All right. Okay, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. And, we will continue this. We'll be back tomorrow. Our guest is going to be Dennis Dodd. And Dennis, Jason, you and Dennis are buddies too.
Uncle Dennis.
Dennis is coming tomorrow. And then Chris King on Friday. So we have a full slot of people coming up, and you're welcome anytime, Jason. So hang in there.
Thanks for having me so much. Appreciate that.
Always a pleasure. All right, gang.
Thanks a lot.
Have a great day, and we'll see you soon. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Okay.